If there is one thing I love more than a good horror game, it's that tense, desperate feeling of fighting off a zombie horde with nothing but a rusty pipe and my own survival instincts. Today, I am walking you through the most terrifying and atmospheric undead games on the horizon, handpicked for pure dread. I have had my eye on God's Save Birmingham for a while, and this medieval survival crafter is drawing some serious attention for its raw, gritty portrayal of life and death in a plague-ravaged 14th century version of the city. You are thrust right into a world completely overrun by undead hordes, where staying alive means so much more than just scavenging for food and tools. I love that survival here requires you to manage absolutely everything from your hunger and stamina to your actual hygiene, all while fending off relentless threats. The developers' recent updates hint at some incredibly creative combat tweaks, like literally using a haunch of meat as a weapon, alongside much more precise limb targeting. They are also building deeper resource and barricade systems, which makes every single trip outside the safety of your shelter feel incredibly tense and tactical. If you're a fan of top-down survival horror, I am thrilled to tell you that the cult favorite Darkwood is officially getting a full sequel that is shaping up to expand its deeply eerie and atmospheric world into entirely new territory. This follow-up is actually being developed by Icepick Lodge in close collaboration with the series' original owners, and it moves the profoundly unsettling survival experience over to the dying landscapes around the Aral Sea, taking place years after the events of the first game. You can absolutely expect the original game's core emphasis on scavenging, crafting, and incredibly tense nighttime survival mechanics to carry over into this new entry. Next up on my radar is Canyons, which is really shaping up to be an incredibly intriguing third-person action shooter, set within a gritty, procedurally generated post-apocalyptic world built beautifully in Unreal Engine 5. I have been watching the early teaser and gameplay trailers, and they show off some fantastic dynamic combat, cooperative PvE play, and a massive focus on exploration across sprawling canyon landscapes, where every single firefight feels remarkably tense and unpredictable. The developers are clearly building this with modern visuals and physics in mind, deliberately aiming for a unique mix of survival instincts and tactical shooting that I think could really make it stand out from the usual shooter crowd.
Fell to the awakened, a fusion of flesh. New power has risen. The Order of the Divided Cross.
Moving into some truly dark territory, Ritual Tides is a first-person horror experience absolutely steeped in Lovecraftian dread that literally drops you ashore on a foreboding, fictional British island where uncovering nightmarish secrets is your only way out. This actually serves as the debut title from Vert Paint Studios, but the team is packed with industry veterans who have major titles under their belts, and they are firmly promising an oppressive atmosphere and unnerving imagery rather than relying on cheap jump scares. Looking at the early reveals, everything suggests we are in for a fantastic, slow-burn psychological horror game that keeps environmental storytelling right at its core. We do not have an exact launch date for this one just yet, and though it was originally targeting a fall release, the developers have now officially confirmed it will be launching for both PC and consoles as its development continues.
Now, I must confirm.
Take heart, faithful ones. The garden must still...
To wrap up this batch, we have Project Spectrum, a game that brilliantly flips the usual horror formula by blending tactical squad FPS action. It is being developed by Team Jade, who you might know from Delta Force, and it pits players and elite agents directly against corrupted zones warped by a mysterious force known simply as Ember. The world they have created is deeply dynamic and constantly hostile, featuring psychological elements and improvised combat that really echo shooters like Hunt, Showdown, but obviously with a much heavier paranormal twist. Right now, it is set to be fully free-to-play on PC, and while a PS5 release seems highly likely given some prior listings we have seen, the team has not given us an official console confirmation just yet.
Damn, it's fast.
Approaching Nightfall Manor.
Shifting gears to something completely different, we have Parasite Mutant, an upcoming sci-fi survival horror RPG that absolutely wears its inspirations proudly on its sleeve while still managing to carve out its own highly unique identity. In this one, you step into the shoes of a psionic agent named Nova, who is sent directly to investigate an abandoned island city that is practically crawling with grotesque mutants, all to unravel a deeply unsettling mystery. I find the combat especially fascinating because it utilizes an active time chain system, blending real-time movement with a timing-based action selection mechanic that feels wonderfully reminiscent of late 90s RPGs, which keeps every single battle feeling incredibly tense and strategic. Prefer your horror with a bit more of a historical flavor, Blight Survival is a brilliant indie survival action title from Hanier Studio that cleverly mixes cooperative gameplay with engaging roguelite elements in a world completely plagued by a mysterious corruption. You might actually recognize this one from when it was previously teased under a few other names, but now it is fully focused on having you and up to 3 other players likely tackling incredibly hostile zones absolutely filled to the brim with infected enemies. Your main goals are to gather valuable loot and desperately try to push back the relentless spread of the Blight across the land. The game is set entirely within an alternate, highly gritty environment that is very often presented with gorgeous medieval aesthetics, heavily mixed with terrifying monstrous threats.
Good for the paint.
That's it. That painted armor.
Moving into the highly competitive space, Beautiful Light is rapidly shaping up to be an intensely tense extraction shooter with a massive horror edge, completely built from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5 and currently aiming for a December 2026 release on PC. The core experience centers entirely around its raid mode, where 6 separate teams of players and 6 deeply monstrous anomalies must fight not just the brutal environment itself, but also each other. Your main objective is to grab highly valuable artifacts, survive the incredibly hostile zone, and make a frantic rush for extraction before time runs out or your foes take you down permanently. The absolute coolest twist here is that you can actually choose to play as one of those hostile anomaly creatures, allowing you to turn this nightmarish world directly against the human teams. For fans of legendary survival horror, Forest 3 officially marks the next major chapter from End Night Games, the exact same studio that brought us the massive hits The Forest and Sons of the Forest. This highly anticipated survival horror sequel was finally revealed at the Game Awards 2025, and it boldly relocates the franchise's signature tension completely away from dense, familiar woods and drops you straight into an exceptionally eerie alien world. The premise is that your spaceship has violently crash-landed, leaving you stranded while deeply hostile and bizarre creatures roam freely across a variety of highly atmospheric biomes, ranging from totally desolate plains to incredibly strange monster-filled landscapes. The reveal trailer showcased some wonderfully intense combat against truly colossal threats, and it heavily hinted at the inclusion of much more advanced tools and deeper survival systems than we have ever seen in the series before. Zeverland is entirely shaping up to be a wild, open-world survival experience completely built around the ideas of chaotic co-op multiplayer and pure sandbox survival. From everything that has been shown to the public so far, you and a group of others jump directly into a chaotic, post-apocalyptic world at the exact moment civilization officially crumbles. You will find yourselves facing off against massive hordes of mutated creatures known as Zeds, desperately scavenging for crucial resources, building protective shelters, crafting necessary tools, and literally even using your own creativity itself as a functional weapon against the threats. The game heavily encourages cooperative play, though it also fully supports competitive PvP, allowing you to utilize completely improvised weapons, dive into deep base building, and tackle pure exploration across a genuinely large shared map.
Now I'm a farmer. Mike threw in the potatoes and peppers he grew. Who knew you could feast like this?
You might think Zeds don't need to eat, but
The apocalypse. This world's taught me why. Because I'm about to rock your world!
Directive 8020 is a sci-fi survival horror narrative adventure from Supermassive Games that looks absolutely stunning, built in Unreal Engine 5. You are set far from Earth on the incredibly harsh planet known as Tau Ceti F. Joining the crew of the Cassiopeia right after a devastating crash leaves the very survival of humanity hanging by a single thread. The game perfectly blends their signature immersive cinematic storytelling with incredibly intense, real-time alien threats that can actually mimic their prey, which brilliantly forces you to constantly decide who you can trust and how far you are willing to go to survive. Every choice you make carries serious consequences, and that famous branching narrative is once again a core part of the entire experience. Taking things back down to a much more intimate, grounded scale, Never Be Alone is currently listed as an upcoming survival horror experience, where you are tasked with defending your very own home from completely unseen dangers constantly lurking in the shadows. It has officially been added to platforms like the Epic Games Store with a simple coming soon status, and it leans heavily into a horror-centric theme entirely focused on your survival against terrifying threats both inside and right outside your supposedly safe space. Looking at the storefront, everything suggests the game beautifully blends traditional survival elements with an undeniably eerie atmosphere. But unfortunately, exact launch timing, concrete story details, and deeper gameplay mechanics have not actually been fully revealed to us just yet.
And make the world a safer place. Build a base, power it up with a generator. Beyond the undead, you'll battle hunger, thirst, and the deadly silence of the
Displacement has recently been previewed as a gripping first-person survival horror game heavily inspired by absolute classics like Condemned, greatly emphasizing brutal, melee-focused combat and incredibly tense encounters with enemies. According to all the early reports we have seen, players will get to directly engage with a wide variety of weapons and cleverly use everyday environmental objects for improvised attacks, literally turning everything from ordinary tables to scattered debris into highly effective combat tools. The whole game is clearly aiming to capture that wonderfully gritty and visceral feel where every single fight is unpredictable and highly intense, but it is currently still actively under development with absolutely no confirmed release date on the calendar right now.
I've got to find something sharp. Shit.
Tiny Hero Courier is a delightfully quirky and surprisingly fast-paced action game set entirely within a fascinating miniature post-apocalyptic world that you get to explore from a charming isometric perspective. You play as Rupert, a very humble courier who is officially tasked with delivering essential packages while frantically dodging massive hordes of zombies, carefully handling incredibly tricky cargo like highly explosive TNT and delicate, fragile items. The whole thing requires you to navigate through clever, puzzle-filled environments that honestly look exactly like stunning tiny dioramas. I love that it heavily leans into genuine humor and charm just as much as it provides those classic survival thrills, complete with highly dynamic delivery challenges and wonderfully clever mechanics directly tied to carrying and fiercely protecting your parcels during every single run. Rounding out this set, They Left Us Here is rapidly shaping up to be an incredibly tense sci-fi first-person horror adventure where you suddenly wake up completely alone on a desolate, abandoned space station with absolutely no memory and no obvious way out. As you slowly navigate through its deeply eerie corridors, you are going to constantly encounter totally malfunctioning systems, stubbornly locked doors, deeply cryptic puzzles, and truly terrifying lurking horrors, which actually includes a relentlessly rogue AI that actively hunts you right through the station's darkest sectors. Decrepit is an upcoming first-person survival horror title that leans heavily into exploration within a decaying post-apocalyptic setting. In this game, you will traverse completely abandoned, monster-infested environments that are often dark, oppressive, and absolutely full of rich environmental storytelling. I love that it forces you to use whatever tools and wits you happen to have just to survive, deeply emphasizing a genuine fear of the unknown alongside strict resource scarcity. The combat can honestly get incredibly brutal whenever you find yourself cornered by its nightmarish creatures. Currently, it is still in active development, carrying a broad 2026 release window exclusively for PC, though we do not have an exact date just yet. Valor Mortis is a phenomenal first-person Souls-like action RPG from One More Level, the very same studio behind Ghost Runner. This one beautifully blends brutal melee and limited range combat with supernatural powers, setting the whole experience in an alternate, completely plague-infested 19th century Europe. You step into the boots of William, a soldier who has been mysteriously resurrected with corrupting power, forcing you to fight grotesque enemies while simultaneously unraveling a deeply dark conspiracy directly tied to Napoleon's war-torn world. The combat expertly combines precise parries, quick dodges, visceral weapons, and devastating magical abilities, and the developers have already met early feedback through extensive playtests as it confidently heads toward release.
This isn't war.
Yes. That is why you must never lose faith.
This is damnation.
Ardem is an incredibly ambitious open-world survival RPG fully built on Unreal Engine 5, placing you right into a reality where the world as you know it has entirely collapsed following a deadly virus outbreak. You are going to be able to freely explore a huge, meticulously handcrafted 64 square kilometer map that is absolutely full of abandoned towns, overgrown highways, and completely ruined outposts. While exploring, you will constantly need to scavenge for vital food and materials, meticulously build and power up your personal base, repair broken vehicles, and even work to restore electricity, all while fending off highly hostile mutants and carefully managing your deep survival systems.
Food. Fill bathtubs. Fill sinks. Every night belongs to them. Avoid hospitals. Avoid shelters. Stay out. Fire spread fast in abandoned neighborhoods. Water is more important. Car alarms are worse. If you must travel, travel at dawn, not night.
Nature of Dread is an upcoming survival horror game that leans incredibly heavily into a dread-soaked atmosphere and pure psychological fear. Judging entirely from the very limited official info we currently have available, the project boldly positions itself as a deeply nightmare-inspired experience, heavily influenced by intense Lovecraftian and deeply surreal horror themes. In this game, facing down truly terrifying creatures is presented as being just as much of an intense internal struggle as it is a brutal external one. Although a genuinely creepy teaser trailer and an official Steam wishlist page are currently up right now, absolutely no detailed gameplay mechanics or specific release timing have been announced just yet. We only know for certain that it is planned to launch exclusively on PC, with a strictly to be announced launch date for now.
Да будет сердце твое.
Parasite Mutant is a phenomenal sci-fi survival horror RPG that is entirely built around a brilliant hybrid combat system officially called Active Time Chains. This deeply unique system perfectly blends real-time timing mechanics directly with highly strategic turn-based elements to create something genuinely fresh. You take on the role of psionic agent Nova, who has been urgently sent to investigate a completely abandoned island utterly filled with horrifying mutants in a very distant future setting. The game beautifully utilizes a striking semi-realistic art style, cleverly including optional retro and CRT visual filters if you really want to dial in that classic nostalgic feel while you play. Beyond the combat, it includes deep puzzle solving, a highly rewarding equipment progression system, and a fantastic new Game Plus mode that actually unlocks entirely new areas for you to explore on a replay.